welcome back to Cat and Dogs on Wheels. If you're new to the channel, I'm Cat. This is Smokey. And RJ was the big guy you saw in the intro. He's off running around playing with company dogs. So today we're going to paint the bus. I chose to use Automotive Paint. I used Restoration Shop. I got that off Amazon. I will put the link down below in the description. So, there was a few reasons why I wanted to get the Automotive Paint. It just seemed like I needed to save a little extra money and put the extra expense into the paint job on the outside of my home. I knew she was going to be traveling on the road. It just made sense to give her a car finish. So, it's a do-it-yourself. I have never painted a vehicle before, so don't take anything that I say as gospel. It's just my experience. Our experience. The dogs were a little bit stressed when I was stressed. So, you need an air compressor and you need an air paint gun. I went to Home Depot. I can't give you details on the paint gun. It was middle of the line. I paid a little over $100 for it. And in the end, I ended up throwing it away because I couldn't bear the thought of cleaning it another time. It wasn't worth it to sell it, and I had no intention of painting another vehicle again. But no regrets. No regrets. I had the place all to myself. My sister and brother-in-law were off on a camping trip. I was in my Zen moment. I was ready to rock and roll. I had borrowed an air compressor from my sweet ex-brother-in-law. He's a fireman and he's saved me many times in many different situations. And in this situation, he loaned me an air compressor. So now I'm all set, ready to go. I proceeded to make my first big, huge mistake. I've watched a lot of YouTube videos on, using the Automotive Paint, and I had noticed that all these guys mix only small amounts and only enough to fill their gun. But nobody ever talked about why they did that. And since it was so critical, the mixing of the hardener and the paint and the ratio, and I thought, well, what if I accidentally do a little too much in one or a little too less in one? Will it make my finish all weird? Will some of it harden right and some of it not? So I got the clever idea, I'll just mix the whole gallon. That way I know it's all the same ratio. So I dumped that hardener in my full gallon and mixed her up, all ready to go in a bucket. And I'm off and running. And I get a couple of sprays in, looking good, had my practice sprays in, I'm going, I'm feeling good, and suddenly, boom, everything goes dead. The air compressor, not just the air compressor, all the lights in the shop, everything, the shop was dead. So I ran around, no panic, I ran around, checked the breakers and everything, but nothing was flipped. They were all fine. So I flipped them all anyway, just to make sure. No, couldn't get anything to work. So I had another good idea. I thought, well, maybe the shop doesn't have as much power as the house. Don't know where that idea popped in my head. So I hooked up some extra extension cords and ran the power from the kitchen. And I get a couple of sprays in, and bam, it's dead. Now, sort of in a panic, I run into the house, and oh my God, all the power in the kitchen is out. So once again, I go into the house, breaker boxes, and checking everything, nothing's flipped. Though I flipped everything to make sure nothing's flipped. Now I hit the panic button and call my firefighter ex-brother-in-law savior and tell him I've broken the power in the house. Everything's out. The kitchen, the shop, they're dead. He said, don't panic, and he came over. And he went through the same routine of going through, checking all the breakers, and he said, okay, but his thought was, you just need to let everything sit for a couple hours. Let everything cool down. He goes, this is the hottest day of the year so far. And I'm like, hot? You know, I think it was mid-80s. And I'm a California girl. That's where my heart is. And so it didn't seem that hot to me. But I knew this air compressor wasn't working. So meanwhile, while I'm waiting for the wires to cool down, I run to Home Depot and rent an air compressor and come back. And I wait a couple more hours, and sure enough, the power came back on. So with a new compressor in hand, I think I'm ready to paint again. Only I discover that during all this time, my paint hardened. It hardened in the can, the full gallon, and it hardened in my paint gun. Bummer. That was really hard, cleaning the paint gun. I had to clean the paint gun and getting hardened paint out of all the nozzles, and they're really fine, like pinprick nozzles too. So anyway, I did get it cleaned, and it was like, okay, here we go. I ordered more paint off Amazon. They only had it in the quart. They were out of gallons, so it ended up costing more than a gallon would have cost. But they were rushing it to me, so it was going to get here the next day, so I could go ahead and continue on with my first coat of paint. So now I'm ready to go again, only this time I'm only going to mix per paint gun holder can hold. So I mixed my paint up, got that in there, and I'm ready to go again. I'm all happy. And I probably got to spray for about 3 minutes, and the compressor shut off. But not all the power, just the compressor. So I go check it out, and it feels really hot. So I thought, okay, we'll let it cool down. So I let it cool down for about 10-15 minutes. Went back, okay, she's cooled down. Sprayed for about 3 minutes, and boom. It overheats, and I have to wait another 15 minutes for it to cool down to get another 3 minutes of spraying in. And I did that long enough to get this much done on the back of the bus. Now I'm really getting frustrated again, fighting back the tears, saying this sucks. Now, I'd had another bump happen while I was in the midst of these other things and running around I had to go to my dad's and check on him, and my car broke down. So now I need to go to Home Depot and return the air compressor, but my car has broken down. So once again, fire alarm to my sweet ex-brother-in-law and tell him I need a ride to Home Depot. This air compressor isn't working. I need to get another one. Well, he says, "What? I'll run you to Home Depot. We'll return it." He goes, "I have another air compressor. Let's try this other air compressor." So he takes me to Home Depot, we turn it, I get my money back, and he goes to his place and gets another air compressor and comes and hooks me up. I have to say, I fell in love with this air compressor. These are true feelings that you see me hugging the air compressor. First coat is on. I sort of went to hell and back to get it on. This is the hardest thing I've ever done. Took forever, but she's got one coat on. I'll tell the story of all the crazy, insane things that happened trying to just get to this point. But she's looking pretty good for a DIY first time paint job. I didn't do any filming of painting the second coat. At this point, all I want to do is get the paint on. I didn't even tour it after I got the second coat on because it looked the same as with the first coat. And I was just so exhausted. I took a couple of victory pictures, but I was so exhausted. I spent 2 hours cleaning the paint gun and just went inside my taped up bus. The next morning it was dry. Once I took the tape off and stuff, I was re-energized. It was like, okay, cool. I'm glad I went through this. It was worth it. It looks great. But I will admit that it took me a month before I really had the motivation to tape the bus all off again and tackle the trim. So today I'm taping off the bus, getting ready to paint the trim. I'm doing the mirrors, one stripe down the sides of the bus. I'm doing the bumpers and the grill. So I'm going to lose my sunlight, but I thought I would show you my second tape job, only because it's hysterical. But I got things. It was like wrapping the bus like a Christmas present. But there she is. It's crazy. But she's covered in plastic, I think, where she needs to be covered. Once the trim was done, I was in love, and I was so glad I went through this. I absolutely love my paint job, and I'm very, very proud of it. Considering it's the first vehicle I've ever painted, and working with automotive paint is a completely different animal than working with house paint. I've done a lot of painting, but just never anything like this. And the reward is awesome. It was worth all the F-me's and tears and worries, because I love the end results. I still have left to put my Norma Jean on the front, and I'm going to put Cat and Dogs on Wheels on the back, on the big space between the emergency lights. And I'm going to put paw prints in the emergency lights. And then the paint job will officially be done. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to watch these videos. I hope to see you next week on Wednesday and Sunday. Till then, here's what my guys have to say. Woo!